My mother-in-law said I wasn't worthy of her son. Now I own the house she was renting. Have you ever been told you're not good enough for the person you love? Not in a whisper. Not behind your back. But directly to your face. Ev. And it came from the one woman I was trying so hard to win over, my mother-in-law. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You'll never be worthy of my son." I said nothing at the time. Smiled. I swallowed the hurt. But I didn't forget. Fast forward a few years, and the tables quietly turned. Because I walked into the very house she was renting and handed her a lease renewal. With my name on it. I became her landlord. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your worth even when someone tries to define it for you. And before the closing papers and the stunned silence, let me take you back to the day I realized being underestimated could be the greatest power of all. Have you ever been judged unfairly by someone who thought they knew your value? Drop your story in the comments. You're not alone and your voice matters here. Part 1. The first blow. Not good enough. They say marriage isn't just marrying your partner, it's marrying into a whole family. And in my case, that family came with Margaret, Daniel's mother, my mother-in-law. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 33 now, a marketing manager who built her way up from internships and late-night freelancing. I've been married to Daniel for 6 years. He's kind, funny, grounded, everything I ever hoped love could feel like. But from the very beginning, his mother made it clear she didn't think I belonged. Not through yelling. Not even through drama. She was subtle in that cutting, polite kind of way that leaves bruises only you can feel. At our engagement dinner, she looked at me and smiled sweetly as she asked Daniel if he was sure he didn't want to wait for someone more elegant. At Christmas, she made comments about how I must be too tired to help with the dishes after all that social media work. And once, she even gifted me a self-help book titled Leveling Up as a Wife with a sticky note. Thought this might inspire you. I laughed it off. Bit my tongue. Because Daniel loved her. And I loved him. But behind that smile, I won't lie, it stung. Every family gathering felt like a test I hadn't studied for. What I wore was too casual. What I cooked was a bit bland for Daniel's taste. My career. Marketing is nice, dear, but Daniel's in finance. She referred to me as the girl even after we got married. Never my daughter-in-law. Just her. Small things. Constant things. Enough to chip away at even the strongest woman. Then, one night I'll never forget it, we were all at her house for dinner. Daniel had stepped away to take a call. It was just me, Margaret, and the sound of her antique grandfather clock ticking in the corner. She leaned across the table, folded her hands, and looked straight at me. And she said in a voice as cold as the wine in her glass, "You'll never be good enough for my son." No hesitation. No disguise. Just truth, sharp and direct. I sat there frozen for a second, unsure if I heard her right. But I had. I looked back at her. And I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. But because in that moment, I knew she didn't see me. She saw a version of me she had decided not to like before she ever really looked. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just told her, "Thank you for your honesty." And that night, while brushing my teeth in front of the mirror, I made a quiet promise to myself. Not to prove her wrong, but to prove to myself that I was already enough. Because respect doesn't always come through words. Sometimes it comes through action. And I was ready to act. But what about you? Have you ever been told you weren't good enough by someone who never even tried to know the real you? How did you handle it? Did you walk away, or did you stay and rise? Tell me in the comments. I truly want to hear your story. Now let me tell you how I turned her insult into the beginning of something bigger than she could have imagined. Because the thing about being underestimated is that it can light a fire in you no one sees coming. Let's keep going. Part 2. The quiet rise. They say success is the best response. But I wasn't chasing revenge. I was building something for me. After that night at Margaret's dinner table, after her words sank in and settled in my chest like cold stones, I didn't explode. I redirected. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's fuel. By day, I continued my full-time job as a marketing manager. But by night, I opened a new tab on my laptop and I started dreaming louder. I began offering freelance marketing consulting quietly. No grand announcements. No social media posts. Not even Daniel's extended family knew. Especially not Margaret. My weekends became a blur of coffee cups, color palettes, client calls, and long hours rewriting business plans for small shops and struggling brands. I worked from the kitchen table, from the back seat of my car, even from the break room at work during lunch. And yes, there were rejections. Plenty. Emails that started with "unfortunately," and calls that never came. But with every no, I sharpened my skills. And with every yes, I grew. I still smiled at family dinners. Still helped with the dishes. Still let Margaret make her little comments. Because she had no idea that behind every nod and bite of pie, I was quietly building something unstoppable. Within 3 years, my side hustle had turned into a real firm. An actual office space. Small team. My name on the door. The same name Margaret once said didn't belong next to her son's. And the best part, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Clients were referring me left and right. I was making more money than I ever had, and more importantly, I was doing it my way. And through it all, I never said a word to her. Not because I was hiding, but because I didn't need applause from someone who only knew how to clap for herself. Meanwhile, life had shifted for Margaret. After a risky investment tanked one she made without consulting anyone, her finances started slipping. She sold her condo in the suburbs. And eventually, she ended up renting a modest little house in the city. Word got around. Family talk. And though no one said it out loud, I could feel the quiet sympathy ripple through the dinner table that year. I said nothing. Because here's the thing about grace. It doesn't require a stage. But let me ask you something. Have you ever achieved something quietly? Without needing to prove it to anyone? Drop your story in the comments. I want to celebrate your wins too. Because quiet victories, they matter just as much. Now, I wasn't planning on doing anything dramatic. I really wasn't. But then one random Tuesday, while scrolling through listings for a friend who was house hunting, I saw it. That house. The one Margaret had been renting. It was up for sale. And in that moment something clicked. Not out of spite, but out of timing. And maybe, just maybe, out of poetic symmetry. You see, I had the means now. I had the credit, the capital, and the clarity. So I called my real estate agent. Because the next part of this story, it wasn't just personal. It was powerful. Let's keep going. Part 3. The purchase. You ever make a move so quiet, so unexpected that when the truth finally lands, it speaks louder than anything you could have ever shouted? That was me, Emily, the day I bought the house my mother-in-law was renting. Let me take you back to that exact moment. I was sipping coffee at my desk, half skimming a real estate newsletter, when the address jumped out at me like fate itself had typed it in bold. It was Margaret's rental property, or house, for sale. I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I closed the tab, opened it again and whispered, "No way." But deep inside I already knew. It wasn't just any house, it was her house. The one she had moved into after her financial troubles. The one she never mentioned to me, not even once. And for some reason I felt calm. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to humiliate her. But something inside me, maybe the same part of me she once called too soft, stood up straight. This wasn't about her. This was about me. So I picked up the phone, called my real estate agent, and within 2 weeks, I was sitting at a quiet closing table, just me, my lawyer, and the paperwork that changed everything. I signed each page slowly, deliberately, knowing exactly what it meant. I now owned the house she called home. Not out of spite. Not to kick her out. But because it was a smart investment. And if I'm honest, because it was poetic justice served at room temperature with grace and a touch of silence. I chose not to evict her. I didn't even raise the rent that much, just enough to meet market value. When her lease renewal was mailed out, she got a neat little envelope. No frills. No warnings. Inside, just a standard lease. And a name at the bottom. Landlord. Emily Carter. That's me. She didn't call. She didn't write. She didn't show up at my door yelling. She just signed it. I don't know what expression she had on her face when she saw my name. I wasn't there. And that, my friends, was the best part. Because silence can be the loudest statement in the world. No need to explain. No need to justify. Just presence. Ownership. Power. Do you know that feeling when life comes full circle without you having to lift a finger? That's exactly what this felt like. Not a scream, not a storm, but a still, quiet moment of truth. I didn't even tell Daniel right away. Because this wasn't about him. This was about me healing a part of myself I never thought I'd get closure on. So let me ask you something. What would you have done? Would you have bought the house and left the past on the porch? Would you have knocked on the door with your head held high or walked away and never looked back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. This space we've built together. It's for all of us who've been underestimated and chose to rise anyway. And as for Margaret, she said nothing. Least not at first. But our next encounter. That's when the real surprise came. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can own is not a house. It's the truth. Stay with me. You'll want to hear what she said next. Part 4. The conversation that changed everything. Have you ever walked into a room expecting a battle only to find quiet? That's exactly what happened the day Margaret, my mother-in-law, invited me out for tea. I'll be honest with you. I almost didn't go. After everything she'd said to me over the years, after all the belittling, the judgment, the cold smiles passed around like fine china, I had every reason to ignore the invitation. But something in me paused. Maybe curiosity. Maybe compassion. Maybe I just wanted to see if she would actually say the things I once begged her to hear. So I said yes. We met at a little cafe tucked into a quiet corner of town. It wasn't her usual style, no crystal chandeliers, no grand statements. Just 2 chairs by a window and the smell of fresh coffee. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Softer. She didn't lead with pleasantries. She didn't bring flowers. She just sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and looked me in the eye. Emily, she said, her voice almost fragile. I've spent a lot of time thinking lately. About you. About who I was when you entered our lives. And I owe you something I should have given years ago: respect. I didn't speak. I didn't trust my voice to hold steady. I just let her continue. I was wrong, she said quietly. I judged you. I put you in a box that you never belonged in. Not because of anything you did, but because I was afraid. I raised an eyebrow, not out of spite, but genuine confusion. Margaret, afraid. I thought if Daniel chose someone different, she said. Someone I couldn't control, someone who built herself from scratch, it meant I was losing him. And the truth is, I didn't know how to accept a woman who didn't need our approval to thrive. There it was. Not a full confession, not a tearful apology, but something real. Something honest. And strangely, it hit harder than I expected. She stirred her tea as if waiting for my response. But I took my time. I let the silence sit between us, gentle and calm, not bitter like before. When I finally spoke, I said, I didn't buy that house to get even with you. She nodded. I know. I did it because it was a smart investment. But also because I didn't want to be small anymore. Not in your eyes, and not in mine. Margaret looked up, and for the first time since I married Daniel, I saw no judgment. Just something close to admiration. You're not the woman I thought you were, she said. Smiled. No, I'm not. I'm more. And we left it at that. There was no hug. No grand reconciliation. But there was peace. And sometimes peace is the real victory. Not winning the argument, not proving a point. Just choosing not to carry their expectations on your back any longer. So let me ask you, have you ever received an apology you never expected? Did it come too late? Or did it come right when you were finally ready to hear it? I'd love to know. Share your story in the comments. This channel is a safe space for truth and growth. And as I walked away from that cafe, I realized respect doesn't always come when you demand it. Sometimes it shows up when you've already learned to live without it. Stay with me because in the final part I'll tell you what came next. Not the success, not the applause, but the moment I finally saw myself the way I always deserved to be seen. I didn't buy the house to hurt her. I bought it to protect my peace. And in the end, I didn't just earn respect. I built it with every quiet choice, every late-night hustle, every step forward. So if someone has ever told you that you're not enough, let that fuel you. Let your success speak for itself. And tell me below, what's your version of rising quietly? If this story touched you, like and subscribe to My Family Tragedy. We share stories of strength, love, and redemption every day. And maybe next time we'll tell yours.